Have you ever stepped into a room so full of light only to feel the floor vanish under your feet? That's what it felt like that night. Beverly Hills. Chandeliers dripping crystals, waiters gliding by with trays of champagne. My brother's engagement party, everyone polished, smiling, cameras flashing. And me, standing there with a secret that wasn't supposed to be shared. I'd rehearsed it in my head 100 times. Dad, I passed the bar. I'm not joining the studio. I'm starting with a nonprofit downtown. My chest swelled with pride when I said it, voice steady. For one second, I thought maybe he'd look at me differently. Maybe he'd see his daughter, not just his reflection. But silence fell. Forks froze midair. My father's eyes cut sharper than any spotlight. If you walk away from this family, you walk away from us. You are no longer my daughter. Just like that, no hesitation at all. People shifted in their chairs, embarrassed. My mother pressed her lips tight, her diamond ring catching the light as she gripped her glass. My siblings looked down at their plates. Not one word, not one defense. I felt the room tilt. All those years of Sunday brunches, red carpets, carefully staged smiles, gone in an instant. My father didn't raise his voice, but his words carried louder than any microphone. I could feel the waiters pretending not to listen, could see strangers pretending not to stare. Dad, I whispered, hoping, begging, something would crack in him. This is what I want. This is who I am. He leaned closer. Then you're not a Lawrence Carter anymore. And just like that, the glitter in the room meant nothing. I wasn't his daughter, not part of that empire, not even worthy of a seat at that table. The laughter around us dimmed. My plate of untouched food blurred in front of me. My fork slipped from my fingers. The music picked up again, like the party had simply skipped over my erasure. People whispered, eyes sliding away. My brother clinked his glass and tried to continue his speech, pretending nothing happened. But I couldn't unhear it. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The world I thought was mine was gone. The golden cage had been slammed shut, and I stood there stripped bare, knowing everyone saw me as an outsider. I smiled faintly, though my throat burned. Because sometimes, when someone cuts you that deep, you learn the only thing left to hold is yourself. You don't really know how fragile privilege is until it's ripped from you in one night. I learned that lesson brutally. I went to bed still hearing my father's words from the party echoing in my head, like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. You are no longer my daughter. When I woke up the next morning, I reached for my phone. Notifications flooded the screen, emails from the bank. Your account has been restricted. All cards have been frozen. At first, I thought it was some glitch. Banks make mistakes, right? I tried calling the number on the back of my card, but the automated voice kept repeating, "This account is not recognized." My black Amex, the one I'd always waved around without thinking, was just a useless piece of plastic now. An hour later, my landlord called. His voice was too formal, rehearsed. "Sophia, I'm sorry, but your lease has been terminated. Your father's office already sent over the paperwork." I pressed the phone to my ear, begging him to reconsider. But his tone stayed flat, almost embarrassed. "There's nothing I can do." By noon, movers showed up at my door. I hadn't asked for them. They carried boxes, tape, blankets for the furniture. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching strangers touch my clothes, my books, the framed photos I hadn't even taken down from the walls. My life shrank into cardboard without my permission. Neighbors peeked from their doors whispering. Their eyes slid over me like I was a headline they couldn't stop reading. Some looked pitying, others just curious. I felt like an exhibit, a fallen star on display in the dim hallway of my building. I laughed bitterly, because what else could I do? One night ago, I was sipping champagne in a glittering hall. Now I was watching two men carry away my bed like it was junk. I didn't even know where they were taking it. My father had orchestrated it all. Neat, efficient, merciless. That night, I dragged a duffel bag into my friend Rachel's apartment. Her couch sagged beneath me, the springs squealing every time I shifted. She handed me a blanket, eyes wide with sympathy. "Soph, what happened?" What could I tell her? That one sentence had erased me? That wealth doesn't just disappear when you mismanage it, it disappears when someone decides you don't deserve it? I forced a smile, muttered, "Family drama," and tried not to cry into her pillow. Lying there, I couldn't sleep. I listened to the hum of her refrigerator, the distant wail of sirens outside, the neighbor's TV muffled through thin walls. Every sound felt sharper, crueler. My back ached from the lumpy cushions. My pride ached even more. I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Vacations in Italy, premieres with red carpets, family portraits where everyone smiled too perfectly. They looked fake now. They looked like they belonged to someone else. The girl in those photos had no idea how quickly her world could vanish. By dawn, it hit me. This wasn't punishment. It was exile. My father hadn't just cut me off financially. He wanted me to feel invisible, unwanted, erased. And for a while, he succeeded. The next few days blurred together. Without my car, repossessed apparently, I walked everywhere. Downtown, I passed by luxury stores where I used to shop without looking at price tags. Now the glass windows looked like fortresses. Even the coffee shop on the corner, where baristas once greeted me with my name, felt hostile when I realized I couldn't afford a $9 latte anymore. Rachel tried to cheer me up. She made pancakes one morning, poured syrup too generously, joked about how we could start a new life as roommates. But her kindness rubbed against my shame. I hated the thought of freeloading. I wanted to buy groceries, to contribute rent. Instead, I sat on her couch, a guest overstaying from the first night. At night, I lay awake staring at her ceiling. My father's voice replayed over and over, "You are no longer my daughter." It echoed until I wanted to scream. Sleep didn't come. Hunger gnawed at me. I remembered my old fridge, stocked with sparkling water, fresh fruit, imported cheese, all of it gone. Now I ate instant noodles and tried not to let Rachel see how my hands trembled while holding the bowl. Each day, I filled out job applications. My resume looked impressive, degrees, internships, the golden surname. But every time I hit submit, doubt crept in. Should I even include my last name? Would it help or hurt now? The Lawrence Carter name had always been my key. Now it felt like a lock that barred me from doors. One afternoon, I sat in the public library using free Wi-Fi. 2 students whispered at the next table. "That's her," one said. "The girl who got disowned." They didn't mean to be cruel, but pity clung to their voices. I lowered my head, stared at my laptop screen, and typed through blurred tears. The silence from my family hurt most. Not a single call, not a single message. My siblings, who I thought would check in, vanished into the safety of silence. My mother's absence was the heaviest. She didn't even send a text. Their fear of my father's disapproval was stronger than their love for me. Loneliness wrapped around me like a second skin. It was heavier than losing the apartment, heavier than losing the credit cards. And yet, beneath the loneliness, something flickered. Stubbornness. Every morning, I brushed my teeth with the cheapest toothpaste I'd ever bought. I looked in Rachel's small bathroom mirror and whispered, "You're still here." My hair was messy, my clothes wrinkled, but my eyes, they were still mine. That thought became my anchor. I started keeping a notebook. I tracked every expense, every idea, every possibility. If my old life had been built on illusions, maybe this new one could be built on truth. It scared me, but it thrilled me too. The couch was still uncomfortable, the whispers still cut, but night after night, I repeated one line until it rooted itself inside me. If everything can be taken overnight, then everything can be rebuilt too. And this time, it will be mine. There's a silence that hurts worse than words. After the party, I told myself it would pass. Tempers cool. People think, then they call. I kept my phone face up on Rachel's wobbly coffee table, the screen lighting the room like a tiny lighthouse every time a notification blinked. Not a single one was from my family. I started with Marcus because older brothers are supposed to close ranks when storms hit. Straight to voicemail. The robotic voice sounded smug. Mailbox is full. I tried again, pacing the kitchen in borrowed socks, whispering, "Come on, just pick up." Nothing. I typed a text I deleted twice before sending, "I'm okay. I could use your voice." The 3 dots appeared, danced, disappeared. Hours passed. No reply. Claire answered with a bubble that felt colder than silence. "Can't talk." "Please don't drag me into this. 10 words, clean as a glass door. You can see through it, but you still walk into it and bruise." I stared at those 10 words until the edges of the screen went fuzzy. My thumbs hovered, then dropped. I told myself she was scared, not heartless. I told myself Marcus was busy, not indifferent. I told myself anything that wasn't the truth, that in our house, loyalty came with conditions. That afternoon, I walked to the reservoir because moving felt better than sitting still. Ducks churned the water into coins. A jogger passed, headphones on, oblivious. I kept hearing my father's voice laid over the city sounds. "You are no longer my daughter." A sentence with no appeal, a verdict with my siblings' silent signatures at the bottom. The past felt like a well-lit room I could see but not enter. In the present, I pressed call again. This time, Marcus answered. For a second, I forgot my anger and just breathed his name. Marcus. He didn't say mine. "Sophia, you shouldn't be calling me." His voice was low, like he was already in a conversation he couldn't be overheard having. I swallowed. I needed to hear somebody say they saw what happened. A pause. Traffic hissed at the far edge of his line. Dad was upset. You know how he gets. That's not an explanation. It's a pattern, I said. You watched him erase me. He exhaled, the sound of a door closing. Don't make me choose. You already did. Silence again. Then the gentle cruelty of logistics. I have a meeting. We'll talk later. Click. I stood by the reservoir until the wind made my eyes water. Later never came. Back at Rachel's, she poured coffee and slid the mug across the counter. Maybe give it time, she said carefully, like handing me a fragile plate. Fear makes people small, I said. I just didn't think it would make them smaller than love. That night, I tried Claire one more time. She answered on video, her face washed in golden apartment light, the kind you get from lamps you buy with a discount code. Behind her, a vase of lilies stood too straight on a glass table. Sophia, this is a bad time, she whispered, glancing off camera like someone was timing her. I'll be quick, I promised. Did you believe him? Her lips parted, then pressed tight. I believe Dad believes what he says. That's not the same as believing him. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so familiar I could feel the ghost of it in my own fingers. I can't afford to get cut off. Something inside me flinched. Not anger, recognition. We had both grown up at the same table, but not in the same safety. I had scholarships and headlines. She had softer armor, our mother's conditional praise, a boyfriend with an eye on my father's favor, an internship that paid in prestige. I'm not asking you to set yourself on fire, I said. I'm asking you to say I'm real. She looked at me long enough to make hope dangerous. Then she blinked. I have to go. The screen went black before I could say goodbye. I put the phone face down and listened to the radiator tick like a tired metronome. Rachel curled up beside me on the couch, shoulder against mine. "You have me," she said. It helped. It didn't cure. The next morning, I woke to a family group text that hadn't pinged on my phone since the party. New message: a photo of my father and Marcus at a private club lunch. The caption, courtesy of my mother, "Proud of my men." My name wasn't there. My presence wasn't missed. I typed and erased 3 different replies. None of them sounded like the person I wanted to be. I put the phone down and let the photo sit in the chat like a portrait hung in a hallway I no longer walked, days blurred. I made lists in a spiral notebook. Budgets, maybe jobs, things I knew how to do that weren't glamorous but could pay a bill. I wrote "Call Claire next week" and left it unchecked. I wrote "Don't beg" and drew a box around it. By midweek, I realized something ordinary and awful. My siblings weren't neutral. Their silence was a choice. Maybe the only one they felt they could make, but a choice all the same. A vote cast with empty hands. A signature written in disappearing ink that still stained. So I made a choice too. I turned off notifications for the family chat and moved it to a folder on the last screen of my phone, the digital equivalent of shutting a drawer. It wasn't revenge, it was triage. You stop the bleeding before you stitch. That evening, I stood on Rachel's fire escape with a warm mug and watched taillights stitch a red line down Sunset. The city hummed, indifferent and alive. Somewhere inside that noise, my life still existed. Smaller, poorer, but mine. I whispered, "If blood won't stand for me, I'll stand for myself." Behind me, Rachel slid the window open. "Dinner?" "Yeah," I said, stepping back inside. "Let's eat." The radiator ticked. The phone lay face down. The silence remained. It hurt. It didn't own me. I used to think safety meant numbers. Numbers in a bank account. Numbers on a paycheck. Numbers of people who would pick up the phone when I called. But when you're cut off, you realize safety isn't numbers. It's silence. The morning it hit hardest, I walked to the bank in person, thinking maybe the emails were a mistake. The building smelled of polished marble and cold air conditioning, the kind that makes you shiver even in summer. I slid my card across the counter, trying to look confident. The teller swiped it once, frowned, swiped again. Then she glanced at her screen like it had betrayed her. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter," she said, lowering her voice. "This account has been closed. Closed." The word clanged like a door in a cave. I asked if she could check again. She looked at me with polite pity. "It says here the trustee revoked access. There's nothing I can do, trustee, my father. He hadn't just cut me off at dinner. He'd erased every bridge I could use to crawl back. I left the bank with my hands empty and my heart pounding. Outside, the sun was blinding. The kind of cruel brightness that makes shadows disappear. I walked fast, like moving could outpace the humiliation. But no matter how far I went, the thought followed. I had nothing. No credit, no savings, no cushion. That night, Rachel sat beside me on her couch, the springs groaning like they shared the weight. "We'll figure it out," she said, pressing a cup of tea into my hands. Her apartment smelled of peppermint and laundry detergent. It should have felt safe, but safety built on someone else's kindness is fragile. I wanted to contribute. I scrolled through job listings on her old laptop, the keys sticking under my fingers. Most positions wanted experience I didn't have or offered paychecks that barely covered rent. The irony burned. I had diplomas, internships, connections, but those connections had vanished with my last name. Nobody wanted to hire the girl who had become a family scandal. Days blurred into each other. I rationed instant noodles and dollar store granola bars. I learned to make coffee at home, cheap and bitter, instead of walking into cafes where the baristas used to know my order. My heels gathered dust in the corner, useless in a world where I walked everywhere. One afternoon, I sat in the library again, hunched over a notebook. The page was filled with numbers, budgets scribbled in pen, crossed out, rewritten. Rent, food, transportation. Each total ended higher than the money I had. I tapped my pen against the margin, listening to the echo of footsteps around me. For the first time in years, math wasn't abstract. It was survival. A group of students at the next table laughed loudly, flipping through textbooks. I felt a pang sharp as glass. They had the luxury of planning careers, while I was calculating how many packs of ramen I could buy with $10. That evening, Rachel came home carrying groceries. I tried to hand her a crumpled $5 bill I'd saved. "For rent," I said. She shook her head. "Keep it. You'll need it more than I do." Her generosity warmed me, but also scraped against my pride. I wanted to scream, "I'm not helpless. I can stand on my own." But standing on your own requires ground beneath your feet, and mine had been pulled away. At night, I lay awake, listening to the city pulse outside her window. My mind replayed the party, the frozen stairs, my father's decree. Each memory was a stone pressing into my chest, but underneath the weight, a thought kept sparking. If they wanted me powerless, maybe power is something I have to build myself. The thought scared me. It also lit a fire. The next morning, I wrote 3 words at the top of my notebook. Start from zero. I didn't know how, but I knew it was the only way forward. Rachel's couch was more than furniture. It was a sentence, a daily reminder of what I had lost, and a fragile proof of what I still had. By day, it became a desk, cluttered with my borrowed laptop, cheap pens, and notebooks where I scribbled plans that never seemed to add up. By night, it transformed into my bed, springs pressing against my ribs, the blanket slipping no matter how tightly I pulled it around me. The couch smelled faintly of detergent and Rachel's vanilla candle. It wasn't home, but it was survival. At first I told myself it was temporary. Just a few days until my siblings came around. Just a week until my father calmed down. But days turned into weeks. My phone stayed silent, my name unspoken in the house where I grew up. I woke every morning with the imprint of couch seams on my cheek, a physical brand of exile. Rachel never complained. She made tea at night, handed me mugs without a word, and filled awkward silences with stories from work. Sometimes she cracked jokes, trying to make me laugh when she caught me staring too long at her grocery bags or her fridge. "You're family now," she told me one evening, her voice firm in a way that left no room for argument. "Stop acting like a guest." I smiled, but guilt twisted in my stomach. Every kindness felt like a debt I couldn't repay. One night we lay side by side, the cushions sagging beneath us. The city noise seeped through the thin windows. Sirens, honking cars, laughter that belonged to people with better lives. My chest felt tight, my thoughts circling like vultures. Finally I whispered, "Do you think I'm pathetic?" Rachel turned her head, her hair brushing my arm. She snorted, not unkindly. "No, I think you're bruised, big difference." Her answer struck deeper than sympathy. Bruised meant hurt, but not destroyed. Wounded, but able to heal. The word planted itself in me, small but steady. Maybe I wasn't finished. Maybe I was only bruised. Still, shame weighed heavy. I scrolled through job listings late into the night, thumb aching from endless swipes. Openings for retail clerks, delivery drivers, temp assistants. Jobs that didn't ask about last names, didn't care about pedigrees. Jobs that barely paid enough to cover rent. My pride resisted. My stomach argued louder. The couch became my confessional. Each night I told it the same story. I had been erased. I was trying to rebuild. I didn't know how. The cushions soaked up my frustration, my muffled tears, my whispered promises to do better tomorrow. In the morning, I would smooth the blanket, fluff the pillows, and pretend it hadn't been my battlefield hours earlier, Rachel noticed. "You're too quiet," she said one Saturday morning, flipping pancakes in her chipped skillet. "I know you're drowning inside your head. I wanted to protest, to claim I was fine. but the couch had heard the truth already. So I just said, "I don't know who I am without them." Rachel slid a pancake onto my plate, dripping with syrup. "Then maybe it's time to find out." Her words lingered as I sat back on the couch that afternoon, notebook in hand. I wrote 3 columns: skills, wants, needs. Skills, research, writing, organizing. Wants, independence, dignity. Needs, food, rent, sleep. The page looked pathetic and powerful at the same time. For the first time in weeks, I had something like a plan. Still, every step forward felt like wading through mud. I applied for jobs with trembling hands, second-guessing every line of my resume. Should I include my last name? Would it help or hurt? I deleted it once, then put it back. Identity felt like quicksand. Nights were the hardest. I would roll onto my side, springs poking, city noise taunting, Rachel's steady breathing a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone. I thought about my old bedroom, silk sheets, thick curtains, the quiet hum of central air. It might as well have been another planet. Here, the couch sagged under me, reminding me with every creak that life as I knew it was over. And yet, it became the place where I started to imagine a different future. Not the one built on my father's approval or my family's money, but one stitched together with stubbornness and Rachel's relentless kindness. A future where survival wasn't shameful. It was proof that I could lose everything and still be standing, even if only on a sagging couch in a borrowed apartment. One night, as I lay staring at the ceiling, I whispered into the dark, "I'm still here." The couch creaked like it agreed. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start. There were small moments that stitched me back together, like the night Rachel brought home takeout dumplings because she knew I was too tired to boil noodles again, or the afternoon we watched reruns of a sitcom, laughing until tears blurred my vision, forgetting for half an hour that my life had collapsed. The couch carried all of it, the grief, the guilt, the glimpses of joy. Sometimes I hated it. I hated the squeak of the springs, the sag in the middle, the way my back ached when I woke. But sometimes I loved it too because it was honest. It didn't pretend to be comfortable. It didn't pretend to be mine. It simply held me night after night when nothing else did. On Sundays, I called it my church. I'd sit cross-legged, notebook open, whispering silent prayers to nobody in particular. Prayers that sounded more like bargains. Let me find work. Let me stand again. Let me prove I'm more than their rejection. The couch never answered, but it never left either. The more nights I spent on it, the more I realized exile wasn't the end. It was a beginning dressed in rags. My father thought he had reduced me to nothing, but nothing was also a clean slate. And on this couch, in Rachel's tiny apartment with peeling paint and noisy neighbors, I began to sketch who I might become. I wasn't ready to call it hope, but it was close enough. I had always believed work was about passion. That was the story drilled into me. Find what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. But when you're cut off from everything, work isn't about passion. It's about survival. The first morning I decided to apply seriously, Rachel pressed a mug of coffee into my hands and said, "Don't overthink it. Just pick something. Anything." Her tone was gentle but firm. I nodded, even though my chest tightened at the thought. Anything. The word tasted bitter. I sat at her kitchen table with my laptop. The screen glowed with listings: cashier at a grocery store, receptionist at a dentist's office, delivery driver for a courier company. My eyes skimmed past them, instinctively searching for positions with prestige. Old habits die hard. But prestige wasn't going to pay for toothpaste or bus fare. I filled out my first application for a retail clerk job. My fingers hesitated on the last name line. Should I type Lawrence-Carter? The name that once opened doors might now slam them shut. After 5 minutes of staring, I deleted it. Typed just Sophia. It looked naked. It looked real. Days stretched into a blur of applications. I walked the streets with a folder of resumes, sweating under the California sun, rehearsing polite smiles for managers who barely glanced at me. Some stores asked me to leave my resume on a pile that already looked like a graveyard. Others gave me forced smiles, the kind that said, "You don't belong here." The rejections piled up fast. Emails with phrases like, "We've decided to move forward with other candidates," or "Thank you for your interest." No, each line cut deeper, not because I wanted the job so badly, but because even the lowest rung seemed out of reach. Rachel found me one evening slumped on the couch, phone in hand, staring at yet another rejection. "You're not failing," she said, sitting down beside me. "You're starting—" I shook my head. "Feels the same." She nudged my shoulder. "Difference is, starting hurts less later." Her words were kind, but pride still gnawed at me. I had grown up believing certain jobs were beneath me. Now those were the only jobs available. The irony burned every time I stood in line at a fast food restaurant, watching teenagers take orders with more dignity than I felt filling out applications. Finally, a grocery store called me for an interview. I borrowed Rachel's blazer, ironed it carefully, and practiced answers in the mirror. The manager, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, asked simple questions. Could I lift boxes? Did I have reliable transportation? Could I handle early shifts? I nodded to each, swallowing the truth about my aching back and lack of a car. When she shook my hand and said, "We'll give you a trial week," my chest filled with something close to relief. Not triumph, not pride, just relief. The first day was humbling. I stocked shelves, my arms sore from carrying boxes of cereal and soda. I wore a name tag that read simply, Sophia. Nobody cared about my last name. Customers brushed past me, sometimes polite, sometimes rude, always indifferent. For the first time in my life, I was invisible in the best way possible. That night, back on Rachel's couch, I stared at the ceiling and let the exhaustion sink in. My body ached, my feet throbbed, but my heart felt lighter. I had earned my own meal that day, even if it was just a sandwich from the store's discount bin. Lying there, I whispered to myself, "It's not much, but it's mine." The envelope felt lighter than it should have, almost fragile in my hands. My first paycheck. Not a fortune, not even close, but mine. I sat at Rachel's kitchen table staring at the numbers printed in neat black ink. I expected pride, maybe joy. Instead, what I felt was quiet, a strange calm, like I had been holding my breath for weeks and finally let a little air out. Rachel slid into the chair across from me, balancing her coffee mug. "How's it feel?" she asked. I turned the envelope over, still not opening it. "Like proof." "Proof I'm not completely useless," she grinned. "Open it then." "Proof doesn't count if you don't look." I tore the paper, unfolded the check. The amount was modest, barely enough to cover a week's rent if I had been on my own. But the numbers glowed against the white paper, brighter than any bank account my family had ever waved in my face. Because these were mine, earned with my own hands. Rachel tapped the table. "So, celebration dinner tonight? My treat?" I shook my head. "No, this one's on me." We ended up at a cheap diner near the grocery store. The booth smelled faintly of fries, the neon light flickering over chipped menus. I ordered pancakes for dinner. Rachel ordered a burger. When the bill came, I pulled the check from my pocket and slid cash across the table. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from something close to freedom. Rachel raised her glass of soda. To Sophia, first paycheck, first step. I clinked mine against hers, syrup sticking to my fingers. The moment was small, but it felt enormous. Later that night, Lying back on the couch, I held the empty envelope against my chest. The springs still dug into my ribs, the blanket still slipped off. Nothing about the couch had changed, but I had. For the first time since my exile, I imagined a future where survival wasn't just about scraping by. It could be about building. Maybe slowly, maybe clumsily, but building nonetheless. The check wasn't just money. It was a key to doors that didn't belong to my father or my siblings or anyone who had dismissed me. It was my beginning. The silence from my family had stretched so long, I almost believed they'd erased me completely. No calls, no messages, no curious texts, just absence, heavy and deliberate. But gossip has a way of finding cracks. It came one Tuesday evening when I was folding uniforms fresh from the laundromat. Rachel walked in, tossing her bag onto the couch, eyes sharp. "Sophia," she said, "I ran into someone today. Guess who?" I looked up, wary. "Who?" "Your cousin. At the coffee shop near work." My chest tightened and... Rachel hesitated, then sat down. "She asked about you. Said the family's been talking. Word is you're working at a grocery store." The way she said it made my stomach churn. "Working at a grocery store." The phrase sounded like an insult when filtered through my family's mouths. A fall from grace, proof of failure. I pressed my hands to my thighs, trying to steady them. "What did you say?" "That you're doing fine. That you're stronger than they ever gave you credit for." Rachel's tone was firm, protective, but her eyes softened. "But Sophia, they're watching, maybe waiting." Anger flared hot. Not because of the gossip itself, but because it confirmed what I feared. Even in exile, I wasn't free. My family still had a hold, their whispers like chains. That night, I lay awake on the couch, the city noise seeping through thin blinds. I imagined my father's voice dripping with disdain. A Lawrence Carter, bagging groceries, how humiliating. I wanted to scream, to prove I was more than their twisted expectations. But beneath the anger was something else, a spark of defiance. If they thought this was failure, maybe it was time to redefine what success meant. Not their mansions, not their dinner parties, not their hollow applause. Success could be simpler, a paycheck, a meal I paid for myself, a future unshaped by their control. Still, I knew the whispers would grow louder. My cousin had seen me. My father would hear. The next move was coming. I could feel it like a storm building. For the first time, though, I wasn't afraid. I was ready to stand. The message arrived on a gray Thursday morning, tucked between bills and coupons in Rachel's mailbox. A cream-colored envelope, my name written in looping script I recognized instantly. My sister's handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was an invitation, embossed and elegant, a family gathering. Not a wedding, not a holiday, just an important dinner. No explanation, no apology. At the bottom, in smaller print, a note. "Father insists you come." I stared at the words until they blurred. For months I had been invisible. Now, suddenly, I was summoned like a soldier called back to duty. My stomach knotted. Rachel found me frozen at the table, letter trembling in my hands. "What's that?" she asked. I slid it across to her. She read quickly, then met my eyes. "You don't have to go." "But if I don't?" I trailed off. The truth was, part of me wanted to. Not for reconciliation, but for confrontation. For the chance to stand in front of them not as a discarded daughter, but as someone who had survived without them. That evening, I lay awake on the couch, rehearsing conversations in my head. Would I shout? Would I stay calm? Could I look my father in the eye and not crumble? When the day came, I wore the grocery store blazer, the one I had bought with my first paycheck. Plain, practical, mine. Rachel offered to come, but I shook my head. This was a battle I had to face alone. Walking up the steps of my childhood home, I felt every muscle tense. The grand doors loomed, polished and heavy. I rang the bell, and when it opened, my sister stood there. Her eyes widened, scanning me from head to toe. "You came," she whispered. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "I came to listen and to speak." Inside, the table was set, candles flickering, silverware gleaming. My father sat at the head, his expression carved from stone. The silence stretched as I stepped into the room, every gaze pinned on me. For the first time, I wasn't the girl desperate for approval. I was the woman who had survived the couch, the rejections, the whispers. I had come to confront, and I wasn't leaving quietly. The air in the dining room felt colder than the marble floors. My father's gaze fixed on me like I was a trespasser in my own home. He didn't rise, didn't extend a hand, just let silence hang heavy until it pressed against my lungs. Finally, he spoke. "Sophia, you look different." His tone wasn't curiosity. It was judgment wrapped in politeness. I pulled out a chair, the scrape of wood loud against the hush. "Different doesn't mean worse." A murmur ran around the table. My brother smirked. My sister's eyes darted away. My father folded his hands. "I hear you're working at a grocery store." He said it as if he were announcing a disease. "Yes," I answered evenly. "I am." The corners of his mouth tightened. "You've taken our name and dragged it into aisles and discount bins." I leaned forward, pulse pounding. "I'm surviving." "Without your money, without your approval. That's not dragging a name down. That's standing on my own." His eyes narrowed, a flicker of something. Anger, maybe fear, passing across his face. "You have one chance," he said, voice low but sharp. "Come back. Forget this rebellion. Work for the company, and all will be forgiven." The room tilted for a second, old instincts pulling at me. The desperate urge to be accepted, to belong again. But then I remembered the couch, Rachel's kindness. My first paycheck trembling in my hand, I shook my head. "No." Gasps rippled down the table. My brother scoffed. My father's fist hit the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. "Then you are no daughter of mine." The words sliced, but they didn't break me. I sat straighter. Maybe not. But I'm still me, and I'm finally enough for myself. For a long moment, no one spoke. My father's face hardened into something unmovable. I knew then there would be no reconciliation, not tonight, maybe not ever. But there was clarity. I stood, letting the chair scrape again. Dinner's over for me. And with that, I walked out, the sound of my footsteps echoing against walls that no longer claimed me. The night air outside was sharp, almost cleansing. I walked down the stone steps of my childhood home, the echo of my father's ultimatum still ringing in my ears. No daughter of mine. The words were meant to break me. Instead, they felt like a key turning in a lock. For years, I had carried that house like a weight. Every expectation, every comparison, every cold dismissal. Tonight, with each step away, the weight began to loosen. Rachel was waiting in her car down the street, parked beneath a flickering street lamp. When I slid into the passenger seat, she searched my face. "Well?" I exhaled slowly. He gave me a choice. Go back or be nothing, and I chose me. Rachel smiled, proud and sad at once. "Then you're finally free." The drive back was quiet, the hum of the engine steady, grounding. My mind replayed every detail of that dinner. The sneers, the silence, the way my father's fist rattled the table. But beneath it all, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Back at the apartment, I sank into the couch. It groaned under me like always, familiar, imperfect. But tonight it didn't feel like exile. It felt like a declaration. This was where I had saved myself. In the following days, I noticed small changes. Food tasted better when I bought it with my own paycheck. My reflection looked stronger, even if my eyes still carried shadows. I no longer flinched when my phone buzzed with unknown numbers. I didn't expect apologies anymore, and I didn't need them. The chains were breaking. One evening, Rachel asked softly, "Do you regret it?" Walking away for good? I thought about the mansion, the dinners, the luxury. Then I thought about the couch, the grocery store, the freedom in saying no. "No," I said steady. "For the first time in my life, I don't regret a thing." The words felt like sunlight. The break from my family didn't leave me empty. It left me raw but ready. For the first time, I could ask the question without fear. Who am I, if not a Lawrence Carter? I started small. I opened a checking account in my name alone. No family signatures hovering above mine. I signed the paperwork with a trembling hand, but when the teller smiled and slid the documents back, a quiet pride swelled in my chest. At the grocery store, I worked longer shifts, learning the rhythm of stocking, the quirks of customers, the patience of my coworkers. Some nights I came home with sore feet and aching arms, but exhaustion felt different when it was earned. Not a burden, an investment. Rachel noticed the change. One evening, she pointed at the notebook I had left on the table, filled with scribbles and half-dreams. "You're planning," she said. I nodded. "I want more than just surviving. I want building." She grinned. "That's the Sophia I know." I began carving out pieces of myself. I signed up for a community writing class, something cheap but meaningful. I introduced myself simply as Sophia. No last name, no pedigree. Nobody cared, and the freedom of that nearly brought me to tears. Each week, I wrote essays and short stories, pouring pieces of my journey onto paper. My classmates called my words honest, vulnerable. I called them necessary. Writing became my mirror, reflecting not who I had been told to be, but who I was becoming. The couch, once a symbol of exile, became my workshop. I stayed up late, typing on Rachel's laptop, the hum of the city outside like a strange comfort. Draft after draft, I was building more than stories. I was building a new identity. One night, as I pressed save on another piece, Rachel asked from the doorway, "So, who are you now?" I leaned back, the glow of the screen on my face. Not a daughter desperate for approval. Not a failure trying to crawl back. Just me, Sophia. The words didn't need decoration. They were enough. It was late on a Saturday when Rachel finally said what I think she had been holding back for weeks. We were sitting on the couch, bowls of popcorn between us, reruns flickering across the TV. Out of nowhere, she muted the screen and turned to me. "You've been rebuilding," she said. "But Sophia, when are you going to start living?" Her words hit harder than any rejection letter. I blinked at her, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I am living?" She shook her head. "No, you're surviving. You've got a job, you've got writing, you've got me. But where's your joy? Where's the risk?" I frowned, defensive. "I'm not ready for joy." Rachel leaned forward, her eyes sharp but kind. "Then when will you be? Tomorrow? Next year? After your father finally says something he'll never say? You've already proven you can stand without them. Now prove you can move forward." Her challenge rattled me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the couch creaking under me. She was right. I had built walls of survival so high that nothing could get in, not even happiness. The next morning, Rachel slid a flyer across the table. "Open mic night," she said. "Next weekend. Share one of your stories." My stomach dropped. "No way." "Yes way." She smirked. "You keep saying you're not your family anymore. Then show it, show your voice." The idea terrified me. Speaking my words aloud to strangers? What if they laughed? What if they saw right through me? But part of me ached to try, to step out from the couch, from the shadows of exile, and let my voice exist beyond the page. Rachel raised her coffee mug. "Come on, Sophia, say yes." I swallowed hard, then whispered, "Yes." The word felt like a crack of light breaking through. The night of the open mic, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, reading the first paragraph of my story over and over until the words blurred. Rachel leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with a half smile. "You look like you're about to run a marathon," she teased. "I feel like it," I admitted. My throat was dry, my stomach twisted. What if I choke? "Then you choke," she said simply. "And then you breathe, and you keep going. That's what brave looks like." At the cafe, the air buzzed with chatter and the smell of espresso. A small stage sat under warm string lights, a microphone waiting. People laughed, clapped, snapped fingers as performers shared poems, songs, confessions. My name on the sign-up sheet looked out of place. When the host finally called, "Sophia, you're up," my legs nearly refused to move. Rachel gave me a gentle shove. "Go, this is yours." I climbed the steps, each one echoing like thunder. The microphone loomed. I unfolded my paper, but my hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped it. The crowd was quiet, expectant. I cleared my throat. "Hi, I'm Sophia, just Sophia." My voice cracked, but I kept going. I used to think I needed a last name to matter. Turns out I don't. Murmurs rippled. I began reading, my story spilling into the air. About the couch, the rejections, the paycheck that felt like freedom. My voice wavered, then steadied. People leaned forward, listening. Not judging, listening. Halfway through, I glanced up. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. A man at the back nodded slowly, like he understood. My heart pounded, but the fear melted into something new. Connection. When I finished, the silence lasted a breath, then applause broke out. Not polite, not forced, real. I stood frozen, cheeks burning, until the host motioned me off stage. Back at the table, Rachel was on her feet clapping like I'd just won a medal. She pulled me into a hug. "Told you, brave." For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt seen. Not as a disappointment, not as an exile, but as myself. That night, lying on the couch, I whispered into the dark, "I have a voice." The couch creaked back, like it agreed. The morning after the open mic, my inbox held something unexpected. A message from the cafe's organizer. "Your story moved people. Would you consider coming back next month?" I reread it 3 times, half convinced it was a mistake. Someone wanted me, not my name, not my connections, just me. Rachel grinned when I showed her. "See? You thought you were whispering into a void. Turns out people were listening." Over the next weeks, I returned to the cafe, sharing pieces I had written late at night on the couch. Stories about shame, survival, small victories. Each time the fear returned. And each time, it melted under the warmth of strangers leaning closer, nodding, snapping fingers in support. Recognition began to grow in unexpected ways. A woman approached me after one performance, pressing my hand. "Your words. They're my story too." A young man messaged me online. I didn't know anyone else felt like this. It wasn't fame, it wasn't fortune, it was connection. And connection felt richer than approval ever had. Meanwhile, whispers from my family reached me again. My cousin's texts carried veiled scorn. "So, a grocery clerk and a wannabe writer?" Bold choices. I didn't flinch this time. I typed back simply, "Yes, bold, and mine." For once, their judgment felt powerless. Their recognition had always been conditional, fragile, performative. The recognition I had now, real people, hearing real stories, was solid, untouchable. One evening, Rachel raised her glass across the kitchen table. To recognition that matters, she said. I clinked mine against hers. To finally being seen, the toast echoed louder than any applause from the past. Success used to mean one thing, the polished image my family worshipped. Cars with leather seats, houses that echoed with marble floors, names etched onto plaques and gala invitations. I chased that definition for years, only to find it was never really mine. Now, success looked different. It looked like clocking out after a long shift and buying groceries with money I earned myself. It looked like scribbled notebooks stacked on Rachel's coffee table, pages filled with words that belonged only to me. It looked like strangers at a cafe clapping because they saw themselves in my story. One evening, Rachel caught me staring at my paycheck stub, smiling. "You know," she teased, "your face glows more over that than over all the jewelry you used to wear." I laughed softly. "Because this is mine, every cent. Nobody can take it away." I started defining milestones differently. My first full month of rent, paid without borrowing. My first invitation to submit a piece of writing to a small magazine. My first genuine friendship outside the shadow of my last name. Each one was a brick in a foundation I was building with my own hands. Of course, doubts lingered. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if my family was right, if I had traded grandeur for scraps. But then I remembered how hollow grandeur had felt, how empty the applause when it came at the cost of myself. One night, Rachel asked, "So what's success to you now?" I leaned back on the couch, letting the question settle. Success is being able to breathe in my own skin. It's building something that won't vanish if someone decides I'm unworthy. The words surprised me with their certainty. For the first time, success didn't feel borrowed. It felt written in my handwriting. The couch is still here. Same sagging cushions, same faint smell of detergent and Rachel's vanilla candles. For months, it was my exile, then my confessional, then my workshop. Now, as I sit on it one more time with my notebook in my lap, I realize it has become something else entirely, a witness to transformation. I think back to the girl who first lay here, broken and humiliated, replaying her father's words on a loop. "You're nothing without us." That girl cried into the fabric, terrified she might actually be nothing. But I am not her anymore. I am the woman who stocked shelves until her arms ached, who earned her first paycheck with trembling hands, the woman who stood at an open mic and spoke truth into a microphone, her voice shaky, but her spirit steady. The woman who said no to an ultimatum meant to crush her, and found freedom in the refusal. My family may never see me differently. My father may never speak my name without disdain, and that's fine, because I see me, and I like the reflection staring back now. Rachel asks sometimes if I'll ever forgive them. I don't know the answer. Forgiveness feels less important than moving forward. What matters is that I have a life that belongs to me, messy, imperfect, but mine. Success doesn't glitter here. It hums quietly in the background of ordinary days. Laughter over cheap takeout, the glow of my laptop screen, the feel of my own money in my pocket. Success is not applause from a gilded room. It's peace on a sagging couch. As I write this final page, I think about anyone else who's been told they are nothing without someone else's name or approval. I want them to know bruises heal, silence breaks. And the life you build from scraps can shine brighter than the life someone tried to script for you. I close my notebook, lean back, and whisper the words I once only dreamed of believing. I am enough. The couch creaks as if it agrees.